The wildfires that ripped through Los Angeles will go down in history as one of the most destructive natural disasters in U.S. history. I'm Orion Powell, and I, along with a team of reporters, sought out to look at the full scope of the aftermath of these fires. First, we went to Pepperdine to see how the fire impacted life on campus. Reporters Lisa Wong, Caroline Chang, and Courtney Kim have the full details.
The January wildfires resulted in over 16,000 destroyed homes, displaced thousands of people, and changed livelihoods.
Matthew Morrison, a freshman at Pepperdine University, was one of thousands of students attending a college in Los Angeles who had to evacuate. In Morrison's case, he and other classmates stayed together in the campus library.
And I got woken up by my roommates and suitemates like freaking out. They're like, hey, we need to pack go bags and leave.
Now, 2 months later, Morrison and the Pepperdine community have come together to combine resources in the effort to help fellow Los Angelinos.
One of the ways the school is aiding people both inside and outside of Pepperdine is through service opportunities hosted by the Hub for Spiritual Life.
The Hub routinely works with emergency relief groups, pack up relief kits, and assist with food distribution throughout the city.
We work to recover personal items with the homeowners on those project sites with Samaritan's Purse. And then Boys and Girls Club, Disaster Relief, and Malibu Foundation Community Closet are the two other organizations that we work with.
Kristen Schatzer-Roman is the director of the Hub. She says that since mid-January, over 150 volunteers made of the Pepperdine community have participated in weekly service opportunities.
It was a really lovely thing to be able to do, to be a part of, supporting other people that were affected by that.
But as time goes on, Schatzer-Roman says the recovery effort is going to need more than just these physical acts of service.
Community engagement and service is really focused on direct service efforts. So the need for those kinds of supports will shift over time. I'm hearing from local experts and then also folks who lived through the Woolsey fire in 2018. What we're looking at the time horizon is like 6 to 10 years of recovery.
And the Hub is in it for the long haul.
The ways that we support are to work alongside the community agencies that are connected directly to the residents that are wanting to rebuild here in the community.
This is Lisa Wong reporting for Chapman News.
The Franklin Fire, or sometimes called the Forgotten Fire, broke out back in early December 2024. It engulfed 4,000 acres of the Malibu area and destroyed 48 structures in total. But perhaps the most appalling reaction came from Pepperdine University. As the fire bordered on Pepperdine's campus, the university issued its shelter-in-place protocol. Students assembled in the center of the school at the Payson Library and Tyler Campus Center. One freshman student, Matthew Morrison, described the scene.
You'd go outside, and it would just look like it was just snowing ash.
The fire was so close that it brushed against the windows of the library, but this was the best safety strategy for the university. According to the director of emergency at Pepperdine, John Weber, the campus is constructed to fight fires, beginning with the materials it was made with.
You can just stay right here and we can take care of you and we can go through this together.
Even after the LA County fires, Pepperdine University has taken measures to give students support during this trying time.
The university has worked really intentionally and graciously with employees and students that were impacted by the fires to both give them disbursements of cash, give them donated items that have been collected.
However, some residents say not everyone who was affected are receiving equal aid. California secured some federal funding to assist the firefighting efforts when the Franklin fire first broke out. But now many residents are being told they don't qualify for federal aid to help rebuild their homes.
Everyone needs help during this. It's I can only imagine what it's like to lose a house and everything you own, and then not have any support on that.
FEMA officials say the aid is only available for disasters that have been declared as a state of emergency, and that was never done for the Franklin fire. While the scars remain on the Pepperdine campus, the strong support has shown that university life can get back to normal. My name is Caroline Chang, reporting.
At Pepperdine, where the stay-in-place policies during the fires has been questioned by some, I spoke to John Weber, Director of Emergency Services at Pepperdine, where he explains the university's shelter-in-place policies.
We're not going to shift away from shelter in place. Why send you to some shelter where you're not going to know anybody when you can just stay right here and we can take care of you and we can go through this together. Be safe.
Weber says that Pepperdine has been prepared for decades, starting from the structure to other partnerships.
It's a plan that works because of how our campus is constructed. Our buildings are built in clusters with fire-resistant materials, think stucco and tile roofs, things like that. Our landscapers do a wonderful job both choosing the landscaping that we put in, generally choosing native species that are going to deal better with fires.
Pepperdine officials say they believe their protocol is foolproof because there has been no loss of life during decades of wildfires.
Continuing our coverage of the impact of the fires on Los Angeles universities, reporters Yasmin Bari and Lauren De Los Santos went to UCLA to discuss the damage done to our air quality in the greater LA area.
I'm here at UCLA, where the administration is informing students to pay attention to their health as the consequences of the fires linger. College students across the Los Angeles area are figuring out how to navigate life after the historic fires.
And it got increasingly worse, and my eyes would water and my nose would get itchy and whatever. And once you get to Pasadena, it got really bad with that fire.
This is what Ben Cobble experienced while driving back to Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles during the fires. Little did they know what long-lasting effects this would have on the environment and them. Meteorologist Dr. Bejanath Radino shares why.
The air quality is of definite health concern. The toxicity of those chemicals getting into the runoff and into our water table is also a big concern. So how does that affect our water ecosystem?
At LMU, students who stayed in the area for break kept a close eye on fire maps tracking the progress.
I would say it was the point where, it was probably 4 or 5 days later, and you could go on the wildfire map and you could see the area that was burnt, and it was still 0% contained, and we're like, oh, this is not going to look good.
And it was not looking good. Wildfire smoke carries poisonous gases that make it much more toxic than just normal air. I spoke to a meteorologist at UCLA who says poor air quality most affects people with pre-existing medical conditions, elderly, and children.
Depending on, the atmospheric conditions, the smoke can stick around. It can, bring the particulate matter in the atmosphere can be, toxic, depending on what is also being burnt.
These effects were felt. Alex Tapia is a construction worker at Pepperdine helping to rebuild.
Because of that fire, like I was saying, a lot of the vegetation, a lot of everything that was holding the dirt together is gone. That catch basin filled up with dirt, it's a priority because that actually leads all the water from the mountains all the way out to the drain.
So it's not the air, it's the water too. Dr. Bejanath Radino shares how the water becomes contaminated.
After a fire happens, those burn scars, if you look at the porosity of the soil, it tightens up. So it's less porous. And not a lot of that precipitation is going to be absorbed into the soil. It's just going to run off of that less porous soils. And so it's going to bring with it a lot of mud, a lot of debris flow.
To protect yourself from poor air quality, it's recommended to stay indoors as much as possible, keep windows and doors closed, and consider getting an air purifier for air circulation. If you go outside, make sure to wear an N95 mask. For more information, you can find it online at Bruin Safe. This is Yasmin Berry reporting.
At UCLA, students faced dire situations as the Palisades fire came close to the school's Westwood campus. With classes going remote and the fire coming closer, many UCLA students chose to evacuate.
With the smoke coming so close to campus, the air just felt worse to breathe. We just had to come back to school, and the objective was just to keep ourselves safe.
Some students were able to go home to evacuate, while other students had to find housing arrangements at a moment's notice. Loyola Marymount University student Nick Parr housed his sister, a student at UCLA, while the Palisades fire burned.
Thankfully, she actually got out pretty quickly, but she lives near UCLA, and so they had a pretty late evacuation notice. It wasn't the first couple days, but she thankfully got out. I think mostly the air quality was just bad over there.
While only areas near the campus saw evacuation warnings, students found the university lacking in its response to the Palisades fire. Classes scheduled in the days after the fire started were only canceled the day before, leaving students scrambling to make proper evacuation arrangements.
It wasn't like I could just drive home. Generally, I just wish there was more guidance in how to respond to an event like that.
We reached out to the UCLA Police Department about the school's response to the Palisades fire and did not respond. But, according to their social media, they say they provided, quote, critical support during our campus state of emergency, end quote.
Although the community is still reeling from the long-term effects of the LA wildfires, many students have used this as a learning lesson to learn more about evacuation protocols, especially on their college campuses. They hope that they are more prepared in the event that this happens again. I'm Lauren Joy de Los Santos reporting. Back to you.
While Yasmin and Lauren were looking up discussing the damage to our air quality, reporter Kira Johnson looked to the oceans to discuss the toll that they would endure.
After months of deadly wildfires, Southern California's coastline is facing a new threat. A toxic algae bloom is striking earlier and harder than in years past. Scientists now say that the LA fires may be part of the cause. When ash and burn material wash into our oceans after wildfires, they bring with them a surge of nutrients and toxins. Researchers believe it's this runoff that may be fueling harmful algae blooms, like the one currently spreading down our coastlines and producing domoic acid, a powerful neurotoxin.
There's toxins in that ash and that runoff. And when that happens, that in itself can also be harmful to the marine environment. All those toxins are going to be hazardous to many of the marine organisms. But it's also the fact that there's going to be nutrients and other things in that runoff. And when that happens, that can lead to what are called hazardous or toxic algae blooms.
What you see behind me is an estuary. It may look peaceful right now, but it's actually a part of a hidden network of storm drains that take contaminants directly into our Pacific Oceans. After events like the wildfires, we see ash, debris, and toxic chemicals being channeled down these waterways. Researchers are now speculating the cause and effect between the recent algae blooms and how this might pose a threat to the marine ecosystems going forward.
Fish consume toxic algae, and sea lions, dolphins, and whales eat those fish. The result? Neurological damage, seizures, and even death. This toxin has already been linked to the deaths of over 100 marine animals, with reports stretching from Malibu to San Diego. It's not just wildlife at risk. The bloom is hitting just as summer ramps up, a make-or-break time for beach towns like Laguna Beach, where tourism supports local businesses. Warnings about toxic water and dying marine life could deter visitors and threaten an already vulnerable coastal economy.
People have been getting rashes after they've been surfing near the river mouths and storm drains, and they've also been getting sick with sinus infections.
This disaster underscores how connected we are to the ocean, even miles away. What starts in backyards, hillsides, and city streets can end up here, on our beaches, in our tide pools, and inside the wildlife struggling to survive. Experts warn that land-based pollution doesn't stay on land for long, and when it reaches the sea, it can tip the balance of an entire ecosystem.
From high up in the canyons to right here at our coastlines, what we do after the LA wildfires matters, because the next environmental disaster may not burn, it might bloom. Reporting from Doheny State Beach, I'm Kira Johnson. Back to you.
Now we speak with those who helped minimize the damage wrought by the fires and how many found redemption in the blazing hillside. Rosemary Wright joins us in speaking to the incarcerated firefighters who battled the fire.
People coming out of incarceration often didn't have the opportunity to become firefighters. People who had put their lives on the line while they were in fire camps and supporting firefighters just didn't have a true opportunity to become a firefighter.
Lewis says that ARC approached then Governor Jerry Brown in 2018. Alongside the California Department of Corrections and the California Conservation Corps, they were able to make a change.
This incredible program has now been birthed, and we have so many success stories. People want to be in fire camps so that they can pursue their dream, and their dream in many instances is to become a certified firefighter.
Fireman Eddie Herrera made this transition himself after 18 years of incarceration.
There's those moments where I step back and reflect and I think about it. I'm like, wow, where I was at before, being in a cell 24/7 confined to these quarters, having no sense of hope at some time, and then being able to know that you fast forward and where I'm at and being able to be that inspiration and hope for others now,
Herrera remembers one event that changed it all for him during his time as an incarcerated firefighter in the institutional firehouse program.
Performing CPR on a 27-year sheriff deputy on his way to work in Sacramento. That was one pivotal moment. As I'm in the ambulance, putting compression on his chest, looking out in the rear of the ambulance and seeing a lot of personnel, law enforcement, military, just creating a line, and that's when it hit me like this is one of their brothers,
Herrera says the deputy died of his injuries, and afterward, he remembers putting an American flag over the man's body and saluting him as he was taken away. He also recalls the feeling of law enforcement shaking his hand and the deputy's wife thanking him.
This is one of those things where it's like, wow, you're no longer being defined by what your past and what mistake you made. Now you're actually there as a public servant and a first responder, so all that goes away.
That was the impact the incarcerated firefighter program had on Herrera. At the site of the historic Los Angeles fires, we see the effect the program has had on a community.
This was the pathway to someone's home. Now, it's a burn scar. Local fire authorities say that devastation like this could have been even more widespread without the help of incarcerated firefighters.
Over 1,000 incarcerated firefighters were deployed to areas like this during the Los Angeles fires. The ARC stays true to its mission for impact like this and stories like Herrera's.
When I see Eddie or any of the over 225 formerly incarcerated firefighters, it motivates me to continue to do work that helps people that are incarcerated. And it really, for me, it helps me know that the world is seeing us, people that have been incarcerated, in a different light.
We're joined now by reporter Isabella Savea with the story of Los Angeles' female incarcerated firefighters.
The devastating Los Angeles fires in early January called over 1,400 firefighters. Almost half were incarcerated and some even being female. This isn't the first time we are hearing about incarcerated female firefighters, yet many headlines today don't necessarily include the stories of them. The first reported death of a female firefighter in the state of California was reported after the Mulholland fires in 2016. The death of 22-year-old Shauna Lynn Jones was featured in an article written by the LA Times with less than 600 words.
She was, only 22 and 3 months away from release, and there seemed like there was a lot more to talk about. The other thing that really struck me was that there was no information about her as a person. I didn't feel like I knew who she was outside of the fact that it was reported that she was a convicted criminal. And I didn't think that was fair or right.
Lowe brought to life these women's stories through first-hand accounts in her book, while also addressing the theme of reform, climate crisis, and the stigma and difficulties incarcerated firefighters have finding jobs after their sentence.
I think that the path from release to reentry to, being able to have a job, support yourself, have a community, it's one of the hardest that I've ever talked about with people, because I think that there's very few support systems that actually help people navigate being able to do it. I think having a conviction on your record makes it even harder to find work. And then there's so much bias against people who are convicted, and there's a bias against it. And so they basically can't get the jobs that they were doing side by side with civilian firefighters.
California Governor Gavin Newsom signed Assembly Bill 2147, which created an expedited expungement process for certain former incarcerated individuals who participated in the state's conservation camp program. The bill aims to remove barriers that prevent these individuals from entering the firefighting profession upon release.
You know, I think there's a few different programs that are trying to bridge the gap between incarcerated firefighting and civilian firefighting. That this is focused on women is positive. I think looking at what the real effect is what remains to be seen.
Lowe concluded our interview by saying, and I quote, "I felt like I saw a story that needed to be told and wasn't told fully, and so I pursued it. I tried to tell the story to the best of my ability, and I think that can be true of anyone." End quote. Reporting for Chapman University, I'm Isabella Savea.
Now we move to the aftermath of the fires and how people will rebuild. Reporter Lisa Pressler spoke with the volunteers who are in the Palisades helping to rebuild in any way they can.
This was the entrance to somebody's beautiful home that was destroyed from the fires. As you can see, there are washer and dryers still standing and chimneys too. All of this adds up to extensive rebuilding time.
I'm assuming that there's going to be a lot more left because it's probably going to take at least a few years to rebuild this. And I'm sure we're going to be needed to help assist with traffic control and obviously for security reasons.
Nearly 8,000 homes and businesses have been damaged or destroyed.
It's unbelievable. It's horrible. I feel for these people, and it's just, you look around at the devastation, it's just unimaginable unless you're here. And you look around and I can't use the words to describe, it's horrible. It's horrible.
Many volunteers have been helping clean up and communities are coming together to rebuild.
Earlier today, we were helping this beautiful, great lady, Cameron, and it's very impressive that when they find something that is more sentimental value, it just breaks them completely. More than jewelry or money or whatever you can find. Like, she's like, this is what my kid gave me in kindergarten. I can't believe I found it. You know, it's so, I get chills right now. It's so emotional, you know, that you can be part of giving that little piece back to that family and that person.
Another volunteer shares how the fire has personally impacted him and his community.
Many of the places that I interacted with are damaged or no longer here, so it just hit a lot of nerves. One of my friends moved to Arizona with his wife and kids. Our church moved to Santa Monica, which is convenient for me, but not for a lot of people. Kids are displaced from their friends and their communities, so it's really a tough time. And the fact that it's going to take a lot of time is probably one of the biggest challenges.
But despite the loss and displacement, there is hope. These volunteers share their thoughts on how to move forward and how people can help.
I think for a lot of people that might not be believers, you have to really have faith and understand that God has a plan no matter what, and that we're not in control. And it's really about savoring life. It's not about material things, and just having faith when we're in the storm or going into one or coming out of one.
I think this is not a problem just for Pacific Palisades community. It's a problem from all LA, and we should all try to, this is the moment that we should unite and come together after everything, and try to make this faster or help someone else.
I'm Lisa Pressler. Back to you.
Continuing our look into what the aftermath and rebuild will look like, reporter Prinny Martinez spoke to water truck driver Rick Sanchez to get his perspective as he's looked upon the massive amounts of rubble.
We're out here on Sunset Boulevard and Los Leones Drive, right outside Westside Waldorf School, where, as you can see right behind me, there are a lot of construction happening in the efforts to help rebuild what was left from the fire.
I've gone on a location and saw a lady just bawling in tears as we were, demolishing her chimney and clearing out the debris from the lot.
That was Rick Sanchez. He is one of the water truck drivers.
His role is to fill water buffaloes so that firefighters have access to water.
Water buffaloes have a 400-gallon mobile tank that they could put from location to location. That way they don't have to rely on a water truck sitting on location. We can be mobile.
Water truck drivers play a critical role in keeping crews supplied. Teams rely on mobile water buffaloes to help with demolition and debris removal. There is a lot of focus on clearing debris, but for many homeowners, the loss is personal. Some return to their properties hoping to recover anything that survived the flames.
I spoke with a woman who wanted to find a 150-year-old brooch that pretty much was a family heirloom, and she did her best to find it but couldn't find it. It's a pretty bad situation.
The scale of the cleanup is massive. Workers working 7 days a week. Officials have also been monitoring water quality in the area. Recent testing confirmed that levels have returned to safe standards, lifting earlier water restrictions. This is a sign of progress for many, but for others, the loss still feels raw. Homes are being cleared and foundations rebuilt, but residents are facing the challenge of starting over.
Finally, I spoke to fire survivor Luke Farine about the toll losing his home has taken on him and his family. In the initial chaos of the Palisades fire, many people struggled to fully grasp the scope of the destruction that unfolded.
It was surreal. We've had a lot of evacuations in the past, or a lot of warnings in the past. I've seen fires here my entire life, so...
For Luke Farine and his family, the morning of January 7th started like any other.
We were all just having breakfast, hanging out. I was getting ready to move out of the Palisades that day, and we just started seeing that there was a small fire, went outside, looked at the smoke, noticed it was close, it was on the hills.
Do you think it's going to come over that hill?
I think it very easily. But we thought it would be put out just like every other time. And so we started getting the evacuation orders, seeing the aircraft.
Returning home, Luke and his family realized the full extent of the damage. Like many others, the biggest losses they suffered were the loss of heirlooms.
My grandfather in the UK, he left us some memorabilia before he passed away. That's lasted for a while. He was a famous cricketer, and so it was really important to my mom and to me, and we went there to try to see if we could find things, photographs, and it was gone.
More than 5,500 homes were destroyed in the nearly 24,000-acre fire. It will also cost more than $250 billion to rebuild. Luke and his family are just one example of thousands of people who lost their homes to the most destructive wildfire in the history of Los Angeles. This has been Orion Powell reporting for Chapman Newsmag. Thank you for watching.